Time after time, we are pressed and terrorized until we feel helplessness, pointlessness. Being Jewish, I wonder at the purpose of this relentless suffering we experience. Indeed, why can't we escape these torments? Why is there no end to these ordeals that seem to repeat themselves in every generation? Our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents suffered hatred during World War II. And we, too, are on our way to experience similar treatment from the world. Some among us believe that the past cannot return, that the atrocities, the way that people treated each other in ancient times or when the Nazis were in power, are unfeasible today. And yet, we see how easily humanity is reverting to that state, and once again, we're the only ones at stake. I've written this booklet because Jews the world over are afraid. The pages before you are an attempt to answer questions that Jews face everywhere, in an effort to present the solution that in fact we are required to pursue. I've tried to be as brief and as concrete as possible, as I'm aware of the restless nature of our generation. And yet, it is my sincere hope and wish that you will find this helpful. With love, Dr. Michael Lightman. Humanity is at a crossroads. On the one hand, we're all dependent on one another for our survival, an offshoot of globalization. On the other hand, we hate being so interdependent. We want to break free and be on our own. It is an unsustainable, highly flammable situation. We are required to decide where to go from here. To make the right decision, as well as to understand how we, the Jewish people, are involved in this predicament, we need to look into the past, to ancient Babylon some 4,000 years back in time. It's well known that the people of Israel came from ancient Babylon, between today's Iraq and Iran. 4,000 years ago, a thriving civilization sprawled over that vast, fertile land, and its people felt connected, sharing the same fate. In the words of the Torah, the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. But as their ties grew stronger, so did their egos. They began to exploit one another and became hateful of each other. So while the Babylonians felt connected to each other, they also grew alienated from one another due to the egoistic nature that was intensifying within them. Searching for a solution to their conflict led the people of Babylon to form two conflicting views. The first was the view of Nimrod, king of Babylon, and the second was the view of Abraham, then a renowned Babylonian sage. David Altshuler, author of David's Fortress, writes in his commentary on Chronicles 1, "Until the days of Nimrod, all the people were equal. No one prevailed over another so as to rule one another, but Nimrod began to prevail and rule the land." In truth, Nimrod made a perfectly reasonable case concerning the emerging hatred among the Babylonians. He argued that they should move beyond the boundaries of Babylon and disperse. When they are far away from one another, he asserted, they would be able to live in peace. Conversely, Abraham's argument was that dispersion would solve nothing. He explained that according to nature's law of evolution, human society is bound to become united. As a result, he strove to unite the Babylonians and to build a perfect society. Simply put, Abraham's method entailed connecting people above their personal egos. When he began to advocate his method among his country folk, thousands and tens of thousands assembled around him, and he planted his tenet in their hearts, writes Maimonides. The rest of the people chose Nimrod's way, dispersion, similar to quarrelsome neighbors trying to stay out of each other's way. These dispersed people gradually became what we now know as human society, civilization. Only today, some 4,000 years down the line, can we begin to realize which one of them was right, Abraham or Nimrod. Abraham and his disciples were forced out of Babylon, and they wandered to a land that later became known as the land of Israel. This group of disciples aspired towards unity and cohesion in accord with the tenet, love your neighbor as yourself. The ego was relentlessly growing in them too, setting them apart, but they exerted in unity nonetheless. In the words of Maimonides, do for others what you would like them to do for you. Thus, through the connection that they obtained among them, above their egos, Abraham's disciples were astounded to discover something entirely new: the force of unity, nature's hidden power. Science tells us that every substance in reality consists of two opposite forces: connection and separation. And these forces balance themselves out. But individuals and human society as a whole evolve using only the negative force, the ego. According to nature's plan, we're required to consciously compensate for the negative force with the positive force of unity. Alas, we possess none of it. Rather, this force exists in nature, and we must discover it through building positive connections amongst us. When Abraham and his disciples compensated for the power of the ego among them with the force of unity, they discovered the wisdom of maintaining balance. They call that method the wisdom of Kabbalah. The wisdom of Kabbalah explains how to unearth nature's positive force and balance our egos. It argues that it is predefined in nature's plan, that in the end all parts of nature, including human society, will achieve unity. Abraham's disciples called themselves Yisrael, Israel, after their desire to go Yashar'el, straight to God, the Creator. That is, they wished to discover nature's force of unity so as to balance the ego that stood between them. Through their unity, they found themselves immersed in the force of unity, the upper force. Israel called the state of connection to nature's upper force that they had discovered the upper world. They also learned that in the process of human development, the rest of the Babylonians who followed Nimrod's advice dispersed through the world and have become today's humanity would also have to achieve unity. That contradiction between the people of Israel, which formed through unity, and the rest of humanity, which formed as a result of separation, is felt even today. Once Abraham's disciples, the people of Israel, left Babylon, they lived in unity for approximately 2,000 years. They did experience struggles during that period, but throughout those years, unity was the key tenet that kept the people together, and their conflicts were meant for one purpose only: to intensify the love among them. However, about 2,000 years ago, the ego exploded among them at such an intensity that they couldn't maintain their unity. Unfounded hatred and egotism broke out and inflicted exile on them. This exile, more than anything else, is an exile from unity. The alienation within the nation of Israel caused them to disperse among the nations, and the separation among them caused the Kabbalists to conceal their wisdom, which then became the secret of a chosen few, the Kabbalists in each generation. These days, humanity is approaching a very similar state to that of ancient Babylon, a state of mutual dependence on the one hand and mutual hatred and alienation on the other. And because we're completely interdependent in our global village, Nimrod's method of drawing apart is no longer feasible. To achieve balance, we are now required to use Abraham's method. This is why it's the nation of Israel that must lead the healing of the pains of human society. Unless we, the Jewish people, do it of our own volition, the nations of the world will coerce us to do it by force. On that note, it's interesting to read the words of Henry Ford, the founder of the Ford Motor Company, and a notorious anti-Semite, in his book, The International Jew, the World's Foremost Problem. Society has a large claim against him, the Jew, that he begin to fulfill the ancient prophecy that through him all the nations of the earth should be blessed. After thousands of years of exerting to build a successful human society using Nimrod's method, the nations of the world are giving up. Moreover, they understand that the solution to their problems is neither technological, nor economic or military. Subconsciously, they feel that the solution lies in unity and that the method of connection exists in the people of Israel, and therefore recognize that they're dependent on the Jews. This causes them to blame the Jews because they possess the key to the world's happiness. Indeed, when the nation of Israel fell from its moral height of love of others, hatred of Israel among the nations commenced. And thus, through anti-Semitism, the nations of the world prod us to disclose the method of connection. Rav Kook, the first chief rabbi of Israel, pointed to that fact in his words, Amalek, Hitler, and so forth, awaken us towards redemption. But the people of Israel are unaware that they are holding the key to the world's happiness, and that the very source of anti-Semitism is that the Jews are carrying within them the method of connection, the key to happiness, the wisdom of Kabbalah. As the world groans under the pressure of two conflicting forces, the global force of connection and the separating force of the ego, we are falling into the state that existed in ancient Babylon prior to the dispersion. But today, we cannot draw apart and sedate our egos. Our only option is to work on our connection, on our unity. We are required to add to our world the positive force that balances the negative power of our ego. The people of Israel, the descendants of the ancient Babylonians who followed Abraham, must implement the wisdom of connection, namely the wisdom of Kabbalah. They are required to set an example to the whole of humanity and thus become light for the nations. The laws of nature dictate that we will all achieve the state of unity. However, there are two ways that we can come to that happy end. One, a path of world wars, suffering, catastrophes, plagues, and natural disasters, or two, a path of gradual balancing of the ego, the path that Abraham planted in his disciples. The latter is the one we suggest. Only through love can we succeed, or as the book of Zohar puts it, everything stands on love, since love your neighbor as yourself is the great rule of the Torah, as Rabbi Akiva asserts. This is the essence of the change that the wisdom of Kabbalah is offering to humanity. The result of proper connections and unity among us will be the revelation of the positive force and a complete disappearance of all problems. In his essay, Introduction to the Book Shining and Welcoming Face, Kabbalist Rav Yehuda Ashlag writes, "It is written in the Zohar, with this composition, the Book of Zohar, the children of Israel will be redeemed from exile." Also, in many other places, it's written that through the expansion of the wisdom of Kabbalah in the masses will we obtain complete redemption. Our organization has set for itself the goal of following the footsteps of the great Kabbalists and disclosing the method of connection to the entire world. We have branches in 64 countries and more than 2 million students worldwide. These students have but one hope: to achieve unity the right way